Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Costa Rica Crypto. Matt here, and today I'm talking to a project that's kind of been hot and up and coming and is starting to receive a lot of attention. I spoke to Domenic before in a previous interview. Really happy to have you back, Domenic. We've kind of talked about a lot of exciting things, but I know there's been a lot of new developments since then. So everything from your upcoming Airdrop to you've got an online conference coming up, I think on the 30th of the month. You guys are announcing new VPs and you've got a ton kind of happening in the background. But before we dip into all that and we really explore all that, do you want to kind of just give a quick summation of who you are and how the project works for anybody who might not have tuned in previously?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. It's good to be back. So Warbly's a financial services blockchain, and we're built around compliance through the network level, through the opportunity for users to go through AML KYC if they want to, and our block producers who have agreed to go through compliance auditing to make sure that we're in line with global financial regulation. And the hope is that we're going to attract businesses that maybe have been on the sidelines to get involved in blockchain and in cryptocurrency and build financial services products on our network that will serve not only the Warbly community, but the EOS community as a whole.
For sure. And I know that one of the main focuses that people have kind of been speaking about is Worbly as kind of a crypto bridge to fiat. But I also know, based on a lot of discussions with you, based on a ton of my own research, that that's kind of like one of the only functions. We'll dip into some of the other things later on in this interview. But how do you see Worbly kind of facilitating this? How is ultimately that going to work?
So the crypto fiat gateway concept is obviously an important part of what we're trying to do. We anticipate there'll be several products doing that. We're certainly incubating a bank concept, a bank Dapps, that will have that ability to allow users to move in and out of crypto and fiat far more easily and cheaper than they do now. But we also anticipate there'll be other people on the chain. We're hoping for it. We're actually out there looking for it. We want to get a lot of options for the community to do that. So that's that part of it. And then, yeah, as you said, there's a lot of other financial services that we anticipate coming on board.
For sure. Here's what really excites me about Warbly. This is what I really like, okay? Because I'm always constantly stressing my private keys. I'm always stressing about somebody coming up and taking my stuff. One of the intentions of Warbly is ultimately to create somewhere where you don't have to worry about somebody stealing your private keys. Am I right when I say that? How are you guys going to facilitate that? Like an insured?
Yes. Yeah, we're looking to develop an insured wallet. We've already talked to insurers. We have at least one lined up that's willing to do liability insurance, so that if you want to, and this will be your option. There'll always be the manual option. If you want to download your private keys and manage everything on your own, you'll be able to do that. But we're going to provide this option for people that, are happy to have us manage their private keys for them in a secure environment with an insured product. And then that way users can feel confident leaving their funds in their wallet so that it's easily accessible and they can move them around or hopefully engage with Dapps and make payments for those services. Just like you do now with something like PayPal.
I love that. So finally, a way to kind of sideswipe the worrying that a lot of people do about their crypto assets. And I think that's freaking huge. I guess the next question I want to ask you is that there's a lot of different Dapps that are being built. One of the ones that you guys are actually building yourselves are, of course, Gamma Bank, right? Which is like the online crypto kind of bank type deal. But I also know that the plan is to develop a ton of other Dapps on Warbly as well. What are some of the ideas that potentially are being developed or potentially could be developed that really excite you?
Well, we have a company that's working on a peer-to-peer insurance platform. We were talking about this a little bit before the show, but the idea is to kind of decentralize insurance risk, and they're going to do it in a way that creates sort of like actuarial oracles that will assess the risk of the policy, kind of generate a rating for it, in a potential premium. So, for example, if someone was a block producer from mainnet, I've heard that these guys are dying for insurance policies because they do have some liability. And let's say they want $1 million worth of insurance. The oracles would be able to assess the risk for that policy and say what they think a reasonable annual premium is. And then users would be able to actually back the bond for the $1 million worth of potential liability. So that's something that's out there. There's FX trading platforms that are interested. We have at least one that's in development. And also there's some supply chain actually that's kind of excited because compliance is kind of something that's not as directly related to supply chain, but it brings a level of legitimacy for these products that they feel a little more in services they feel a little more comfortable with.
For sure. We spoke a little bit earlier too, and I mentioned that I was the owner of a small business, and one of the things that I'd love to see built on the platform, at least in my eyes, is kind of like it's just facilitating the transfer or payment for some of my services from crypto to fiat. I think there's a ton of possibilities and a ton of things that having some legitimacy on the platform is going to be able to serve. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of Warbly develop and seeing some of these projects come out. I think the possibilities are endless. I guess what I want to talk about now is some of the dancing you guys have had to do through some of the financial hoops. Clearly, KYC AML verification is pretty important. What exactly is this KYC verification? And ultimately, how is Warbly going to use it in order to create some insurance?
So, AML KYC is the anti-money laundering, know your customer. So the first part is identity, right? You have to know who you're dealing with, who's basically tied to the account, who's the real world person. And that's pretty easy to do. The somewhat difficult part is the AML, but we're contracting with a third-party vendor who that's their expertise. So we've already signed off on all of that. We're working on the integration right now with the user account. I want to make it a point. I know, you and I have been talking about this, but there's some talk in the community that you have to go through AML KYC to be on Warbly. Not true. You can have a non-AML KYC account with us without issue. Now, there might be Dapps that require that verification that you won't be able to access, but there should be numerous other ways for people to still get engaged and participate in some of the other products and services on chain. But the reason why you need this type of verification and compliance for insurance, for example, is that, there's a risk assessment. And of course, if you don't know your customer at all or your user, then the risk is effectively infinite. You don't know who you're dealing with, right? Combined with that, though, you also need security auditing of some kind. What we've been talking to different insurance companies that are interested in offering products, not only for users, but for Dapps and for the network foundation at large, is that if we have good security auditing protocols combined with the compliance, then the insurers can really assess risk. And once they can do that with probably a little bit of education around blockchain and what some of the potential risks are, they're actually pretty excited to start offering some products and services.
I think that part of the verification is just kind of it's maybe a necessary evil, so to speak, in order to play a game with some of the banks, in order to create kind of a fiat bridge to adoption and bring more people towards blockchain. I think that when you have these checks in place and you're able to insure assets and let people know that you can store your crypto assets here, that it's gonna just ease the mind of a few different people and maybe change the way that we kind of start to perceive blockchain. We've all seen a lot of those hacks at the exchanges. They make a lot of headlines. It's not good PR for crypto. So I think that what you guys are doing is going to alleviate a lot of that. I think that that's a step in the right direction. As always, we always kind of have these chats, but I like to play devil's advocate a little bit here in certain senses. So I've heard a lot of buzz going on about Warbly. It's kind of the new hot topic in a lot of the EOS circles and even there outside of. But of course, I've spoken to a lot of people who are kind of the EOS purists, and they've kind of indicated that I'm not one of these. I'm an EOS purist, but I'm of the belief that what you guys are doing is probably needed to help encourage adoption. But what about for those people who say that maybe Warbly is kind of it's a 180 from some of the ideals that Dan Larimer had in mind when he was building EOS. Like what is, maybe a little bit of a departure, so to speak. Decentralized power. I know that ultimately you do plan on decentralizing, and that Warbly is going to be a bridge to Fiat, and probably an important one. What would you kind of say to some of those critics?
Well, I think that, again, we're a specific use case. I don't think it takes anything away from mainnet whatsoever. We've fostered a very symbiotic relationship with mainnet stakeholders. From, I think you'll see the block producers who are supporting us understand this, many of which are mainnet BPs and paid mainnet BPs. We know that Block.one has an understanding of what we're doing. They get it. You can't do financial compliance on a wholly public blockchain. And it's needed, so some of these decentralized applications that can function in a completely decentralized environment, that's awesome. We're still blockchain people over here at Worbli, and we understand the value in that. But those applications, many of which at the end of the day are going to need to be working businesses, profitable businesses, and they're going to have to conduct financial transactions. And we think that we're the best step while maintaining compliance, so that financial governing bodies are not banging on people's doors 6 months, a year from now, after all that hard work that they've put into building that app, and then next thing you know, they're running afoul of global compliance laws in whatever jurisdiction they're in. So we think we offer a certain level of protection, but then again, there's always going to be what we're calling the manual option for the hardcore crypto user, where they can do certain things and use certain services, and maybe they don't need us. Maybe they don't need easy to use insured gateways that store your private keys. That's fine. They'll have that option. Those options exist already, right? But if we want to get a lot of these other mainstream users interested in blockchain, and I think blockchain's a lot bigger than things like decentralization and some of the concepts. Blockchain's a revolution in a lot of ways. It's the way that many of us interact with one another, the way we cooperate in building things together. There's a lot of aspects of blockchain that aren't just about very specific technical aspects or decentralized nodes or things like that. And we think we're going to bring a lot of those users into the blockchain.
And I think it's worth mentioning, of course, that you do have kind of a 2-year roadmap to decentralization. You need the decentralization thing to kind of set things up. Police assurances, the financial industry does not like uncertainty. So I get it, and I'm looking forward to kind of seeing that roll out. I think it's going to be a cool process. I'm going to throw one more at you just because I like to do this every once in a while. I had a discussion with somebody recently who had said something that and didn't quite make sense to me. And I just kind of want to hear your thoughts on it. They suggested that maybe Warbly could be sanctioned or shut down by a government in another country. I know you guys are going to have nodes and BPs in various countries, so I didn't really understand kind of when we spoke about it. What are your thoughts on that? Is it possible for a single government entity or somebody else to kind of shut down Warbly?
We're not aware of that type of risk. Again, we're taking the highest standards we can find and have done so in our development, in creating the processes for compliance that we've created, which is really typically places like the United States and Europe. We're meeting or exceeding those standards at every turn. And I think what people maybe don't realize about these compliance bodies is they're not witch hunts. Right? These are still professional organizations with people in them, and they have laws and rules too, like due process and things like that. So, intent is important, and I don't think people realize that. I know that sometimes there's some serious wrongs that have maybe been perpetrated by banks or governing bodies around the world, and I'm not saying they're not capable of some harsh judgment on occasion, but for the most part, intention is important. And we've demonstrated that intention with everything we're doing, again, from the security audits and having insurance products and the AML KYC, that we're pretty confident that we're not going to be looking at a scenario where somebody's going to flip a switch. And as you stated, we do have block producers all around the world supporting Warbly. By the time we're done, we're going to have 31 different nodes. We have nodes in South America, United States, all over Asia, Australia, Africa, Europe. So, you're not going to be able to just turn a switch on Warbly. Maybe they'll come after me as an individual, but, I'm not Warbly. I'm just one person who's part of the project. So I'll take my chances.
Good, man. That's a pretty good answer. It was just kind of an interesting conversation that I had. I hear a lot of positive things, don't get me wrong, but I wanted to throw those at you because I want to try to stay as objective as possible.
Sure.
Just give you an opportunity to kind of speak to the community and answer a few of the questions out there. Now let's get down to kind of the nuts and the bolts. I know you guys are huge EOS supporters. You've been in the community for a long time. You're part of the community. And you're not trying to take down EOS as such, right? Rather create a cooperative environment where you can do things that EOS might not be otherwise capable of given the current set of standards. So what exactly can Warbly do that maybe EOS might not be able to for these reasons?
Well, again, I think that, when we originally started taking a look at creating a bank, the consensus from every attorney or accounting firm that we were working with or people in the compliance industry that are part of the project, they said, it can't be done on a fully public blockchain. You have to know who the nodes are even to meet compliance, right? The nodes are processing transactions. They're providing the compute power and the bandwidth in the situation of EOS to the network. And if you don't know who those people are and what they're doing with their money, that could run you afoul of global compliance laws. You also need certain processes and procedures in place at a sort of governance level. One of the reasons why EOS actually facilitates the ability to do this is the governance layer. But again, we can't really hold that up for a vote. I mean, it would be great if everyone on mainnet decided that AML KYC compliance could be a feature of the chain that users could sign up for. And then they would have the proper storage of those documents and everything all baked in. But even if that got voted in, we'd also have to have assurances that it would stay that way. Because again, you're not going to get financial businesses to take the risk of coming onto a blockchain that may or may not be compliant in the future. So it's not only about the present, but it's about the future, providing that type of assurance to the businesses that we're talking to that really has them excited. The conversations we've had with so many companies is basically we've been waiting for something like this because they didn't want to all spin up their own chains. They'd taken a look at that stuff. They realized the infrastructure and the costs and just the headaches involved in running your own blockchain. But they'd love to deploy on a network that's pre-existing that meets these requirements.
100%. I read a recent article by EOS Dublin, and we'll talk about some of your block producers and kind of some of the guys who got lined up here in a little bit. But I read a recent article, which I thought was pretty interesting. They kind of referred to Warbly as like the financial district of EOS. Do you think that that's accurate? And if so, in what capacity?
I'd say that that's absolutely our aspiration. I was using the term like the Wall Street of EOS, and then Sharif came up with the financial district, which I think is better. Maybe Wall Street doesn't have a lot of love out there. But, we're working actively on things like IBC ourselves with our own funds. We know it's on Block One's roadmap, but we don't know when. I'll just say that it can't happen fast enough for us. We want users to be able to move between the mainnet and Warbly and potentially other sister chains that might develop out there for use cases. For example, I've said, I have a medical background in my previous life, and I think there's room for an EOS chain that does like medical records and sensitive healthcare, like telemedicine and things like that. So I think there's use cases for sister chains in the future, and Warbly isn't the first and isn't going to be the last. I think all of this really ultimately benefits, and in our case, we hope to be that that financial district that everybody can just connect to easily and provide all the various financial services products that EOS needs to thrive.
100%. I think that if I can finally have a product where I can easily transfer fiat, I can kind of keep everything in one, my crypto assets along with my banking assets in an insured environment, I think that that's kind of a win for me. It's something I'm definitely interested in, of course. We've spoken a lot about that before. Now let's get into something that I'm sure a lot of people have been asking about. I was one of those people, of course, right? I know that the new chain is going to facilitate, you guys can't force anybody to do this, but you're going to facilitate the use of airdrops perhaps. That will happen in the same way that EOS does airdrops. What are you guys kind of doing to facilitate or coordinate that possibility? And am I kind of accurate when I say that you ultimately will be encouraging some of the Dapps that build on the system to be able to do something like this?
Absolutely. So I can say that anything that we're incubating from the foundation will be doing airdrops on Worbli token holders. Anything that's funded by the Worbli Network Fund, we're going to make that a requirement. And then we're certainly going to encourage the Dapps that build on chain. Now, we don't feel comfortable making it mandatory. It's just, again, as much as we may be catching some flack for people calling us, centralized and all of that stuff, we are trying to provide as much freedom as possible for entrepreneurs, that aren't directly associated or funded by the foundation. But anything that basically flows through the foundation or is funded by the network, will be doing airdrops. And I think that it's a great distribution model for crypto businesses. So I don't see why most Dapps on chain won't be doing it. But again, it's not something I think we can make mandatory in good conscience.
I totally get it. You can build the ecosystem, but you can't force people to partake in certain things. Of course, I think a lot will, and I think there will be some that won't for obvious reasons. Moving on next, I guess you guys have an airdrop or a share drop, as it's so defined, kind of coming up soon. What are the requirements to claim that account? I think a lot of people are under the impression they have to do the KYC in order to do so. And as I understand, that's not quite accurate. How's it all going to work? When is the share drop? And can you kind of just chat about some of the ways that this is all going to go down?
Yeah. So the share drop's happening on 11/1, November 1st of this year. And that's when our user portal will be live. So we built a portal for this purpose. It's really the beginning of the user account, so it has kind of two use cases. But we knew that we'd need to help automate the process of generating an account on our chain. Again, because we're a sister chain, a fork, if you will. We can't just airdrop on mainnet wallets. So we have to get users to come over and open accounts. It will not require AML KYC. AML KYC is required to unlock part of the share drop. We're not being shy about it. We want users to do AML KYC. It's a big part of the purpose of our chain, but you can unlock at least 65% of your tokens without doing AML KYC. And you can wait. You're going to have up to a year to do it. So if you want to wait and just see what kind of Dapps come online on the network that require it, and maybe you then get excited about it, then you can do it then. No one's going to be forcing you to do it right away. But yeah, I mean, you're going to, the portal. So the portal is just going to be putting in your public key. That's going to help you generate your Warbly account. We're not going to be taking any of your private keys. Those will all be stored on the user's local device. That's how you're going to unlock your account. You're going to get your one-to-one from our September 7th snapshot, and your Warbly account will be created. The other thing about the share drop that we figured out is, if you had any tokens like staking or anything like that when we did the snapshot, those will be credited, no problem. And we are working on a solution for multiple accounts. It might not be ready right away at 11/1, but we'll be crediting your account at some point, your sort of main account. So if you want to do the AML KYC to kind of have a chance at unlocking 100% of the tokens, you're going to designate that as like your main account. And then if you had these other multiple accounts, we're going to eventually have a way for you to merge those into one so that you can get, right? Because you can only do AML KYC once. If you had 5 accounts, then that would mean that 4 accounts, even if you wanted to do AML KYC, all of the tokens wouldn't get unlocked. But we're going to have a solution for that so you can get all of your tokens.
Awesome. Let's talk about block producers. I know you guys have got some really quality block producers and some well-known block producers lined up. Who are they? Have you kind of established all of them? And can you just kind of give us a breakdown of some of the interactions and some of the people you're bringing on board?
Sure. So we have 21 that are going to be kind of getting the chain going, and those are our active block producers, and then we have 10 reserve block producers. We're finalizing the 10 reserve block producers by the end of this coming week. I think we only have about 3 spots left, but the top 21 has been set for a few weeks. We're slowly rolling out the announcements. So far, we have EOS Metal, EOS Sphere, EOS Rio, Infinity Block, EOS Trybe, Generos, EOS Dublin, and EOS New York. But there's a lot more that I think everybody's going to be quite familiar with that'll be making announcements in the next few weeks.
Cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that, and it sounds like you've got some good names there as well. So I recently spoke to quite a few of those guys, and I like the list. It sounds like it makes a lot of sense. I want to talk about the roadmap a little bit, I guess. What's close, what's near, and what has you really excited?
So what's close is definitely the launch, right? In the airdrop portal, which really is the beginning of the public network. So that's 11.1. By the end of the year, we expect to have at least our goal is 6 Dapps deployed. I think we'll meet or exceed that fairly easily. So that's sort of through the end of the year. Beginning of next year is really going to be all about the bank in developing that product. I think people will be excited. We're actually revising the white paper right now, and we'll definitely be making that public before the public network launch on November 1st. But we actually had some really creative ideas about how we want to do it. And so we've really changed our model for the bank. But what I like about it is I believe it's something that a lot of people in crypto are going to be able to mimic, and we absolutely will welcome it. It's going to be a kind of a repeatable model that really helps get around some of the more expensive and strict banking licenses that you need in various countries in order to perform the services of a bank. And I think we have a creative approach that allows us to still do it in an absolutely compliant way, but without having to have these extremely expensive, what are typically called like Class A banking licenses in the United States that can cost $10 to $20 million and take 2 years to get. We have a way to basically have all the function of a bank without needing that license.
Sure. I think that there's definitely a need in the industry to allow small businesses to be able to, and large businesses as well, of course, to be able to transact in crypto assets. That's kind of something that Warbly is ultimately facilitating, or will ultimately facilitate.
Yeah, absolutely. The transaction and the crypto asset like custodianship is a big deal right now. And insurance is really one of the biggest factors, I think in that whole game. You need insurance. It's just not palatable that somebody loses a private key or deletes one or something like that, and then they lose all of their value.
For sure. I think that that's one thing that we're kind of missing. I think that you can do it right now, but I think it's incredibly expensive. And something that we talked about in the pre-talk is the way that you're looking to kind of create a system where it's instead of, where it's a grab for the highest fees, people are ultimately competing to be able to give people the lowest fees possible. And hopefully that's something that Warbly is going to be able to facilitate and accommodate. And of course, with that will come adoption. So that's one of the things that kind of has me very interested. And of course I have my eyes on as well. I guess I know that we have, there's a conference coming up at the end of the month. And the only reason why I know that is because I was asked to be a member of the panel there. What exactly is that conference about? What are you guys trying to accomplish with that? And what are the details?
Yeah, so we've decided that we wanted to host a little online conference to talk about some of the stuff that's going on in Worbly, but also just to make a contribution to EOS. I was inspired by the EOS Ignite conference by June from the EOS community. I think he did a great job I enjoyed it. I was part of the conference myself, but really watched so many other people. And, with the technology available to us, we can do these things. We can get online. It's very accessible. I mean, it's nice to show up for like the hackathons in London and all of that, but not a lot of people, unless you live local to London, can afford the flights and accommodations and maybe the time off from work. So I think these online conferences serve a real good purpose. So we've got various panels. The conference is September 30th at the end of the month. And we're going to be definitely talking about Warbly. We have a panel from our block producers to just talk a little bit about, again, why they're supporting Warbly, what it's like being a block producer in general on mainnet. They're going to be riffing about just kind of different topics around being a block producer. Decentralized organizations and governance. We're going to dive into that a little bit. Talk about inter-blockchain communication, which is, again, something that's big for us, but I think big for the whole industry, really, all of blockchain. We hope to see IBC everywhere, not just between EOS chains, but we're working on a project with BitShares, for example. So we're going to be talking about IBC, and then a little bit about like the future. What is the end user ultimately looking for? What are the people of the panel will be talking about? What do they think they're looking for? How are we going to get to adoption? What are the different challenges there? That sort of thing.
For sure. I guess I'm looking for a little bit of juice here. Give me something fresh. I want to. What's something kind of about Warbly that your typical user or maybe the majority of people don't really know or understand? You have something that a lot of people aren't familiar with?
Well, I think that probably something that's relatively fresh is we started talking to a third-party security auditing firm that we're forming a partnership with that's actually going to do security audits for the Dapps coming on chain. And this is something we haven't published yet or spoken about. And we're finding a way to get that cost absorbed so that the Dapps don't even have to pay for it. The recent hack with EOS bet, just that's like today or yesterday's headlines, or overnight, depending on your time zone. But, this is, again, it's a problem. And having insurance is great, but ultimately preventing these things in the first place is even better, right? Because insurance premiums are going to go through the roof if hacks are just a normal, cost of doing business, so to speak. So we're contracting a firm that's going to be doing a sort of security auditing of smart contracts and things like that, as well as just penetration testing. So I think what a lot of people don't realize, a fair amount of a Dapps still going to be just hosted on the web. There's a web app or a mobile app that's running on Android or iOS. There's still vulnerabilities, just regular vulnerabilities. And just because, again, it's crypto and there's value transfer going on, or again, people's wallets maybe being accessed, stuff like that, we want to make sure that people are safe. Really the biggest part of adoption, make it easy to use, sure, but no matter how easy it is to use, if it's dangerous, we really don't think the average person's going to take a long look at crypto until they feel confident that they're not going to get ripped off.
100%. I agree with that. I guess it's weird because it's not weird. It's just you're doing a lot of groundbreaking things and a lot of things that haven't really been done. Warbly in essence is a culmination of a lot of different ideas, with kind of a fiat crypto bridge. What's the most exciting thing about working on this? What really gets you revved up? What do you really enjoy, and what are you most passionate about the whole process?
Well, I think for me, it's access. It is not only bringing more people to blockchain, but it's creating access for a lot of the people in the sort of underserved parts of the world that, haven't had access to financial services, for example, at all. And we think we're going to be able to create availability for sort of the underbanked and unbanked. In addition, and we talked about this a little bit too, is I think that the individuals are going to have access to a lot of different investment products that have not normally been available for the mainstream or non-institutional user or unaccredited investor, right? We live in a world where the wealthy kind of easily get wealthier. And part of that's that capital can make money unto itself without the need for your labor. Your money can sort of make money for you while you sleep. But really, another component of that is that they have access to things like insurance bonds and things like that have very, very predictable and low risk to them, predictable returns and low risk. And that's just not something that the average individual can get involved in right now. But decentralized insurance applications, for example, will make that accessible. Much like ICOs allowed individuals to kind of get in at the VC level, right? The seed level of a project, where again, unless you knew the founders in the traditional world, you weren't going to probably be able to do that, or you had to be an accredited investor or something like that. We think there's going to be accessibility to a lot of various investment products for individuals.
Yeah, we talked about that.
That's cool.
It is cool. That is cool because, as you said, a lot of people don't have access to this, and for a lot of people, it's kind of a game changer. Be able to have access to some of these types of, we spoke about kind of potentially insurance bonds and stuff like that. Your average Joe who works his butt off at work every single week, and maybe scrapes by, but has an extra whatever it might be. Maybe it's $100 that you can put into something that that's going to provide a good return, as opposed to putting it into his bank account where he gets 0.0 and killed with fees, right? Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to it, Dominic. I'm also looking forward, of course, to that conference. I'm going to make sure I put links to everything below, and I'm looking forward to kind of seeing the product develop, see it roll out. Do you have any final words to the EOS community before I send you on your way to do your thing? Any final plugs or anything you're interested in talking about, or just anything you want to say to the community in general?
Just that we hope that as many people as possible participate in the share drop. Worbli.io is the website. That's where it's going to be. That'll be where the portal lives, or at least the link to get there. And if you want to sign up with your email, we can keep you updated. Just come on over. Get an account on Worbli and let's see what we can do together.
You bet. It's a pleasure talking to you as always. I hope we can do this again sometime soon. I look forward to that conference on the 30th, and just look forward to seeing kind of Worbli unfold and seeing what you guys can do with this, because I think it's going to be cool, and I'm definitely interested. I'm definitely watching. I know a lot of other people are too. So you have yourself a fantastic day, Dominic. Thanks so much for talking to me, and we'll catch up soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, buddy. Bye.